votes.
Mayor Wiggins, aye.
Vice Mayor Paulin,
Aye.
Commissioner Dick,
Aye.
Commissioner Press, and Commissioner Myers.
Commissioner Myers, aye.
And the motion passes 9-0 with the revisiting the 10-day language, and I'll take a look at that.
Item number 8, discussion and public hearing on list to the text of the comprehensive land use plan update as it relates to the mixed-use town center and use description, town of Farragut, Aldermen.
This item, really, I guess this discussion started when we started looking at the Town Center Biddle Farms project, and the staff reconvened the Land Use Public Steering Committee, who'd been working in the previous couple of years on different areas, priority areas of the town. We've had some public meetings in different parts of the town, and so obviously we've always known that the mixed-use town center was a critically important area of town, and so really with this development coming in, it was a good time to really focus intensely on this portion of our land use plan and area. So what we did we've had a couple of meetings we had one on July 28th and August 19th. We've had also some discussions at staff developer and planning commission meetings in some manner dealing with this topic. But the main thing that I asked the committee members was just to forget about what we have right now adopted and just think about the concept of a mixed-use town center. What does it mean to you? What would be the key components that you would associate with the mixed-use town center? And with that, we kind of looked at the existing text of the land use plan. There's a couple of pages in the plan that deal with the mixed-use town center land use designation. It has 4 sections: the intent, uses, location, and character. Basically, when we looked through that language, for the most part, it seemed like the language provided for, the key components that most people thought town center would have or should have. I guess the exception was to try to revisit the emphasis that it has currently on high-density residential and its role in the mixed-use town center and surrounding area, and to try to maybe take some other language that's in the plan and blend that in with the language in the mixed-use town center to bring in certain concepts that will take more into consideration the surrounding existing plan of development, so that what happens in the mixed-use town center, particularly in terms of residential development and density, is consistent with its surroundings and doesn't create developments that are incompatible with what they abut. So basically, through this process, there's obviously some short-term things that we could look at, and then some longer-term elements of town center mapping exercises and things that we probably would need to have a lot more engagement in public meetings whenever that does occur. But the text itself is, for the most part, pretty straightforward. And what I did was just went through and looked at the existing text on these 2 pages and basically proposed it to replace the text. I think it, in my view at least, it still promotes the key components that we want to see in a town center. What this text does is more succinctly states the provisions. We don't have as much like some of this text is almost more of a regulatory text as opposed to policy statements, talking about evening extended hours of operation and, how you might market art galleries and things like that. Those are fine, but they don't probably necessarily need to be part of policy statements. And then just kind of look at some of the things that we talked about as a committee and what makes a place, a sense of community, emphasis on interconnectedness, iconic architecture, things that distinguish an area or a development from its surroundings. And then start looking at, trying to not focus as much on density and what happens in a building, but look at the form and arrangement of buildings themselves in relation to each other, in relation to the street, in relation to the surrounding context, and develop some language, some policy statements that would speak to that. And then finally, really address this residential question. And, not necessarily take out the need for high-density residential, but find a place where, that fits in with the intent of the town center. So what I've proposed there in that regard on the uses part here on the screen, the two biggest changes under uses would be the last two, residential uses with densities that are consistent with the transition and flex density concepts described in the COUP update. Residential density in the mixed-use town center should transition internally so that the density along the common boundary is compatible with the density of the existing abutting residential community. So, in other words, you wouldn't want to put a large multifamily building right against a single-family detached subdivision, or even a two-family detached or attached subdivision. The scale and the form would be incompatible with each other. So what the transition and flex density concepts talk about in the plan is that what you have on the periphery needs to match what it is against. And then if you want to increase or decrease that, you do that as you move internal to the development. So that's always been those have always been concepts in our plan. They came about back when we talked about a rezoning that was proposed behind Ingalls, actually. And one thing that we did there was amended the neighborhood service or community service zoning district to provide for attached and detached residential around the periphery of those kind of developments, with the larger facility being more internal to the project. That's an example of the transition concept, so that when you get to the periphery, whatever form of building is there is going to match what it abuts in a different development. So that's that concept. The second one was higher density residential. What's the role of high density residential in the mixed use town center? And be real clear about this, because I think the intent of having high density residential in the first place was to support a mixed use town center. So you have a more dense grouping of people that are within a convenient walking distance to support the downtown. Either they live above the downtown in a vertical mixed-use building, or they're in a horizontal mixed-use development similar to the Biddle Farm development that is, they could walk to the downtown area. So it would be appropriate where it's part of a vertical mixed-use building that's part of the downtown development plan, or an area that's immediately adjacent to and part of the downtown development plan that does not abut existing residential communities. So those are really the two main changes, those two bullet points under uses. The rest of it is just rewording basically existing provisions and really making them more true policy statements has any questions, or I've tried to revise that higher density residential language to really tie it to a downtown development plan. So if you don't have a downtown development plan that this is part of, whether it's within it or adjacent to it, where it doesn't abut existing residential communities, then you just can't do that high density project. You can't, for example, just put a large apartment complex on a piece of property, that's not really integrated and part of a downtown development plan as part of a master concept plan development. So, with that, if anybody has any questions or any questions about any of the other recommended changes, I'll be happy to try to answer that or go through that.
Rita, would it be okay if I went first?
Okay.
This has kind of been my a push. I know Mayor Williams has been involved. Mayor Williams, is it okay if I go first?
You're more than welcome to.
Okay. Because I have a few amendments, so just kind of sit tight. And some of these are suggestions to kind of refocus ourselves. I'm not married to some of it. For instance, instead of calling it mixed-use town center, I was thinking we would call it the town center district, because some of the parcels will not be mixed use, and certainly will be part of a mix of uses. But I was throwing out there town center district. For intent, the first bullet point, provide for the creation of a unique town center, because I don't think that we're really creating a downtown per se, but we are creating a unique town center. And I think we need to kind of delineate that. The third bullet point, I kind of wanted to simplify it a little bit by saying provide for a built environment that prioritizes pedestrian activity but accommodates vehicular activity. In that saying that we're making sure that the buildings are in a human scale, that they're put together at a human scale, that there's a grid pattern. Obviously, we live in the suburbs and nobody wants to give up their vehicles, and so we should be accommodating vehicular activity, but it shouldn't be the focus. The focus should be our pedestrian activity. Under uses, the fourth bullet point, I simply made the change in the second sentence. It says residential density in the town center district should transition internally so that it doesn't, I just changed from mixed-use town center to town center district. The fifth point is where I kind of make some more definitive points, and I'll go through them first and I'll give you my reasoning why. I would say high density residential, not higher. High density residential, I would delete to support a downtown, should only be permitted, and I would delete in vertical mixed use building, all the way to and. So it reads, high density residential should only be permitted as part of a mixed use town center development plan. And I have a sixth point I would add. A mixed use town center development plan, which includes high density residential, is intended to be located only in the area encompassed by South Campbell Station Road, Concord Road, and Kingston Pike. By doing this, I'm basically saying this is where our main mixed-use town center project with high-density residential should be located. We already have an existing center there that they tried to make walkable. I think that we could work with them to beef up the walkability there. It makes sense to have high-density residential there. It doesn't. There's no other existing residential there. It's encompassed by 3 arterial areas. My concern is if we open this up to having more mixed-use residential with high-density residential elsewhere, we are compromising the success of this particular development. We'll end up cannibalizing a bit. And we need to have a focus. If this is, to me, this is our town center, and that is our focus. and we need everything else to work to complement it. So I think the rest of the town center development needs to be less intense and dense in this particular area. That's what I've been pushing for, and those were the changes that I wanted to make. And that's all I have.
Mayor Williams, do you have any comments at this point?
Well, this is pretty well covered what the steering committee looked over during all our meetings, and this is, I think, the direction that we need to be in for the long term. So that's about all I have.
Okay, I'll go down the list here. Commissioner Bellamy, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I do not.
Commissioner Myers?
I do have a couple of comments. I do think that Louise's suggestion about changing it to a town center district is more representative of the type of development that's been proposed and the type of development that will probably continue to be proposed. So I think her changes were very appropriate. There is we've had some language in there that has to do with location and a 1 mile radius of that intersection, and we've had that language in there for a long time, and it gave me a little bit of heartburn years ago. But I quite frankly, and this kind of goes along with what Louise was saying, I think that general area is too large and too broad. As a matter of fact, that 1 mile radius actually encompasses my farm, which you wouldn't think is a mile, but it is. And I think when Louise said kind of delineating it between Concord and Campbell Station, obviously the Ford property may be one that we want to incorporate in there, but I do think if we're going to make some modifications to this, I think we could tighten up that geographic area.
Yeah, I actually looked at that too, because when I measured it, the reason I didn't change that, it was if you went to the furthest extent of the West End Avenue development, I was going to propose half a mile, but it was further than that, so I didn't end up proposing to change it. But I agree with you, that's a pretty wide area, and maybe we shouldn't even specify an area. Maybe it should just be based on where we end up mapping the land use area, the designation, and not worry about, because that's going to reflect where it is.
Mark, I think that's a great idea. Unless somebody sees a reason, I'd like to strike location. That whole bullet, and just strike that out of there.
Because the location will be the map, so it's kind of redundant.
Noah, I agree with your assessment. If we change the language for the purple portion to not be mixed-use town center with a density, but just to simply designate this is where we consider our town center district, the generalities of a town center district is we want it to be walkable, whether it's a mixed-use development plan that we have, or if it's single-family residential or a single-family attached, detached, in that area, we expect it to be walkable. So I appreciate what you're saying. I agree with you. The location kind of always threw me off, too.
Okay, I'll move on to Commissioner Dick. Do you have any questions or comments?
I got quiet. I have no questions.
Okay, Commissioner Green.
Yes, I do have a couple of comments. With Louise's comments, I kind of lost the original proposed language was. So let's start from the proposed language. In the intent on bullet number 3, with your suggestion, Louise, did the term farm and relation to public realm out and stay in there, or did you reword that?
No, I took that out. I understand what you're trying to get at, but it was kind of confusing. So I said, provide for a built environment that, and the rest of that sentence I took out and put in, prioritizes pedestrian activity, but accommodates vehicular activity. That way, you're getting in that idea that form and arrangement of buildings and in relation to the public realm, that's how you prioritize pedestrian activity, is by paying attention to the form, how it relates to the street. There's a lot that goes into creating a pedestrian, a walkable community. And maybe pedestrian activity is not quite the word, but a walkable community, there's a lot of that goes into that recipe. And I wanted to make sure that we weren't excluding all the other things that needs to go into that.
Okay, I'm good with that. I just had trouble with the form. You know, I think we know what we're talking about, but if somebody picks this up and reads it, I'm not sure that they have the same understanding that we do, and the same goes for relation to the public realm. I'm not sure people understand what that means. So I'm okay with what you said there. My next comment is, I think it might have been in character, but it seems like we had some comments about emphasizing public service providers, and that's gone. Is that okay with everybody?
What does that mean, public service provider?
I think it meant a sheriff's office or something like that. That's kind of what I got out of it. That was in the original wording.
The only reason I took that out is I've got mixture uses and variety in other places, and I didn't want to be overly prescriptive in a policy statement. I'd rather just keep it general, let it be kind of organic as far as how it comes about. In fact, it had a prescription for a school in the current language.
Okay, I don't really have a problem with that, but I noticed it had gone away, so I thought I'd bring it up in case some of the folks who have been here a lot longer than I have didn't pick that up. And I think that's the only comments I had. I think you did a really good job of picking up the intent and spirit of what the steering committee was trying to do here. So other than these comments, I think it looks pretty good.
I might need, Louise, some clarification on that second part of where you talked about the location, the Concord Road, Campbell Station.
Okay.
I need to get that language again.
Yeah, I'll type that up for you and forward that to you. And
the reason I didn't be that prescriptive in the location was, this is my perspective, I just was keeping it a little more open, depending on what, you just never know what's going to happen with this project, or the future in general. And what I was trying to do there was just to go back to what was the intent originally of providing for high-density residential in the mixed-use town center. Really, it was to support a downtown development.
Yeah.
That's really what it was there for.
Oh, well, I guess
that's what I was trying to do.
The reason the reason why I'm being so prescriptive is because when I think about our town, the center of our town, and where strategically where a high-density, mixed-use town center development would be most impactful and effective, it's where it's planned for right now because of the existing shopping that's there, the existing
schools.
The schools, but that you're all on that side. We have that tunnel that we're ready to fund under Kingston Pike, which is an opportunity that the trail that runs behind the new Kroger development runs right up to that tunnel's going to be, comes out on the other side. They'll be able to go over to the Admiral's Corner without having to worry about crossing Kingston Pike. Most of our existing commercial is on that side, and it's most of the existing opportunities for some condo developments are on that side. And we know that we're gonna have to work with TDOT to see if there's any solutions for the Kingston Pike Campbell Station Road intersection because right now it is not pedestrian friendly, and a development, a mixed-use town center development with high residential anywhere else is very connected because of that intersection. So I think about when you look at the Brookline. I didn't realize this until recently. Maybe I'm wrong. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. There is a walkway between the French Creperie, right after the French Creperie, that goes back to the trail that's back there. So you can cut back there and cut through and go behind the rest of that kind of that strip mall where the sandwich shop is and everything to get to that trail, and that leads you right out onto Kingston Pike, close to where the new tunnel will be. So from a strategic point of view, it makes all the sense in the world that if we're going to have high-density residential, that is the most, strategically speaking, the best place to put it. And it gives us an opportunity on the Ford property to look at the missing residential that we're missing and work a little bit differently with that one, and know that we're not causing a mess of trying to put high density on a piece of property that does not have as much accessibility as this particular property, as it's surrounded by arterials. So those are kind of the reason why I think that we need to be that prescriptive about that particular piece of it.
This is Nolan, Commissioner Myers. Unless we have some reason that we need to pass this tonight, I'd really be more comfortable if we could get the revisions that we talked about and then vote on it next month.
Mayor Williams, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, if it depends on if everybody's uncomfortable. I'm pretty comfortable with what we've discussed so far.
We haven't finished the questions and comments.
No, that's true. We still like a few more commissioners, and I think it's a little premature, Commissioner Meyer, to put it off until we hear a little bit more about what other folks have got to say about it.
So we will do that. Let's see, Commissioner Russ, did you have to get to you for questions or comments?
The only really comments I have, I think it's been a lot of great work through the workshops and even the staff developer. I think we, checked off all the boxes, Mark, and I think you nailed it. I do lean to agree with Vice Mayor Pavlin's comments and Commissioner Meyer's comments.
If that's what we need to do to postpone the vote to get those comments in, or vote, without, I could probably go either way on that. But I think it's, I think we're there, and those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Sinclair.
Yeah, I think Nolan picked up one of the comments I had was a heartburn, was just a 1 mile, radius type of approach to things rather than a boundary type approach to it. And so if we look into that, mitigate that, I'm good with that. Also, Louise, on bullet 5, there's still language in there using mixed-use town center. Are you comfortable with that, or is that still in sync with what you were recommending on changing the use to town center district?
Yeah, well, because it's part of a mixed-use town center development plan, which is what we're dealing with. By saying that, you're saying that it's a specific development we're working on, not necessarily the mixed-use town center in general. It's a particular plan that includes high-density residential.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to keep up with not seeing just a markup, but trying to make words to the written text. Thank you. I guess just a social comment on where we're going with this, though. I think to think of additional high-density development in this same town center district, I really frown on that, and I also frown on a major connection over to Concord Road. And we've got the side entrance that came past the
exacerbate the issues on Concord Road. And Concord Road it's got a choke point. You're not going to widen it through those cemeteries.
Yeah. Well, and that's Commissioner Taylor, when I look at that, I have an echo. I don't know if that's me or you. I see that's going to be more the people that already use that road that are going to be visiting the commercial side of it. I can't see how many people from the residential side of that will be accessing that road to go to North Shore. They have more convenient access from the Campbell Station Road part. They're going to actually have two access points on that side. So the traffic, and I would love to see, obviously before they apply, they're going to have to do a traffic impact study. That'll certainly show.
I'm just trying to telegraph a concern there because we look at going down the road on this, because it's going to be further development in that core center. And so we have to be sensitive to how the compounding of the issues become.
Yeah.
And how we're going to deal with it, because it's going to get worse. It's just a matter of how do we mitigate it.
Yeah. I will say this, a lot of, because that's people have mentioned. I did a quick and dirty analysis of this particular development with the 66,000 square feet of commercial and the 280 units of apartments, and did a basic traffic calculation impact. It came out to about 4,800 average daily trips. If we ended up just letting the market take it the way it wanted, we'd end up probably with another big box and a strip mall on that, and with the 22 developable acres, that kind of that yields about 120,000 square feet of commercial. Now, would that develop all at once? Not necessarily, but eventually it could very well develop that way, completely car-centric, and that yields about 8,800 average daily trips. So
I think we just have to be sensitive to what there's additional property there.
Yeah.
Further development past what we've been looking at with the current concept from the developer.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to really sharpen our pencils and thoughts on how that total build out looks like. And you're going to talk about North Shore. I don't think people are going to come out of this and go to North Shore through Concord Road. But there's a lot of traffic on Concord Road that cuts Concord Road coming from North Shore, and mainly a lot going either because they're going east on Concord on Kingston Pike when you get to the red light, or they're going straight across to the schools.
Yeah.
And when school's in session or school's letting out, or going and coming in the afternoon, it's a pretty sporty activity right now to get in and out from either Concord Hills or Farm Heights or anywhere in between that and Kingston Pike. So just be sensitive so we look longer term. That's just what I wanted to bring up. But, no, I'm comfortable with it. No further comment.
I'd like to address one comment on that. When we do change the lights out, we'll have more control over the red lights than what we do now. And of course, as you do ongoing traffic studies on that area, I think we'll be able to phase the lights to where we know we'll know what time of day that we're heavy and what time of day that we need to make sure that we keep the traffic moving to where there won't be an issue. I think that's what Commissioner St. Clair was really looking at, is to make sure that we can do everything we can to keep the traffic moving. And I think these new lights will definitely help that.
And also the construction completion on down toward the North Shore in the traffic circle up to Turkey Creek will certainly help too, because you can only use literally one turn lane from Concord Road on the South Campbell Station there.
Yeah. I think that's going to be, and I understand what you're saying, because we run the risk of turning that into like a mini Grigsby Chapel, where the traffic is flowing, but it's flowing so well that the people can't get out of Concord Hills. So
that's a problem now. People coming up
great. I have a question back on the proposed language. Mark, did you catch all the comments that Louise suggested for rewording?
Yeah, I think I caught all of them except for the specific location where the high-density residential would be prescribed.
Okay, I asked because I think it'd be nice if we could approve this with the changes wording without postponing it, because we really wanted to get this part done.
Yeah.
So as we go on with the comments, when we get done with the comments here, perhaps you could just read your version of what element changes you have, and maybe we can just go from there, and maybe we can get enough so that we can approve it tonight.
Yeah.
Sorry to interject here, but
I think that's a good point, because her changes really were minor, in my opinion, pretty minor changes. The only thing that was relatively substantial was that bullet 5 under uses, but then I need personally some clarification on that one. But yeah, I can go back through those.
I think we're not done with all the comments yet, so
Okay.
I think we should apply Chairman Holiday.
Yes. My main concern has been the traffic. The traffic through there in the morning, and then again at school letting out, and even late afternoon is very heavy, very heavy. Not to mention the fact that you have school, you have the new drivers who are not as careful as some of us old folks are about driving through there. So you have all those issues to work around. And I don't know how many of you drive through there at that time of day, but if you haven't, you need to, about 8:15, 8 to 8:15, even 7:30 when you've got the intermediate school and the primary school going in. Of course, you won't have quite as much of that business traffic at that hour in the morning, but you will in the afternoons. So I know years ago, some of those stores that were in where I call the old Food Line Center, they went out of business because people did not come to their businesses at the time of day in the afternoon when the schools were letting out. I used to exercise in that center, and there was I patronized 2 or 3 of those stores that they told me that's why they were closing up, that they lost business in the afternoon when the school was letting out. And so, and a couple of them also in the mornings. So I don't want to see us do that to some of those businesses through there. But that's my main concern, is with the traffic. You add all of the people from the apartments through there. The apartments worry me from the standpoint of traffic, but it also worries me from the standpoint of I don't want to see that run down in 25, 30 years. And apartments have a tendency to do that sort of thing. I don't know what we can do to encourage that from not happening, but I don't want to see that and that space there. So those are my comments. Move along to Louise. Do you have anything else?
Rita, I'll address some of your concerns. When you look at there's 5 access points. If you look at this plan, I can't see how most or even the majority of the people that are living in the apartment, the high-density residential aspect of this, are going to be choosing to go out Concord Road and taking a right to go out to North Shore.
It's not Concord Road that bothers me, it's Kingston Pike.
Okay.
Both left and right on Kingston Pike at that time of day.
Well, in that time of day, the problem isn't traffic, it's a stacking issue. And that's because there's an inefficient traffic pattern on the Farragut High School, middle school, and intermediate campus that bleeds out, well, not so much the intermediate, but when the middle school and high school are getting in, there's 3,500 students there, plus teachers, plus administrators, plus all the support staff.
And families coming and going too. They drop the kids off and they don't park them there.
Yeah.
Stay.
So you end up with a stacking issue, and there's no road project or light timing that's going to make that better. These apartments are only going to put in about 6 or 7 students per school. That's how much the market rate apartments yield. They're not a driver who's going to want to go out to the highway or off to Kingston Pike is going to find a way. They're not going to get in the middle of that. They're not going to try to get in the middle of that. I mean, obviously, to some extent, they're close to it.
Well, unfortunately, you don't have too many options.
Yeah.
Because if
And
you
you
go,
down at that red light, there, where they went into the old food line, to the bank that used to be there.
Yeah.
Don't have to be turning on Campbell Station, toward Campbell Station, and going North Shore. You could be coming out and say, okay, Kingston Pike's, solid. I'm going to that red light, turn left and go up and turn right on Kingston Pike. If there's a way, water's, going to flow a pathway. The same way vehicles go. We've just got to look at. I'm not going to have all the answers right now, but we have.
No. And doing traffic.
That system analysis for the traffic system.
Yeah. And that.
This is John Green. Can I interrupt a minute?
Yeah.
We're not talking about agenda item 8 anymore.
Well, what we're doing is sending the signal.
So I would recommend that we talk
overall aspects. I picked it.
But item agenda 8 is talking about the amendments to the comprehensive land use plan. If we need to talk about the traffic problem, I think we need to talk about it after we get through our agenda, because that sounds like a new agenda item to me. I suggest we get through this discussion on the amendment text changes, and then if we want to go another agenda item at the end of our meeting, then I guess we can do that.
I agree, Commissioner Green. I'm sorry, I kind of got caught up in answers. So sorry.
well, I think it does relate somewhat because we need to be careful with anything that we do that we are aware of the traffic situation wherever it is in town. And I don't know, I've lived here 30 years and the traffic now is unbelievably heavier than it was even 5-10 years ago. And it's all a part of what we want to do with this mixed use or comprehensive land use plan. But I'm good with moving on. So Louise, you have anything else to say? And Mayor?
Well, yeah, I've listened and as we look at what the traffic study will tell us, most of the time when they do those, they'll also have suggestions, and I think myself and Commissioner St. Clair would like to hear these suggestions that they would have on what we need to do to help mitigate some of the issue. I do know that by the time that this center would get done, we would already have the school at Coward Mill already completed, or Knox County would, and that would be pulling students out of our school that are on the north side of the freeway, and they would be going to those schools over there. So if you figure the amount of kids that was in last year's school year, not this year, but because this year we're down because of COVID and a lot of people are homeschooling, but or doing virtual. But still, if you were to figure that plus the amount of normal growth, you would be pulling approximately 200 students out of Farragut system and send them to the Hardin Valley system. So that's going to help matters a little bit. And the other thing is, once when you start to look at the other issues as far as traffic, you know that what we have suggested to the schools, and they've not really addressed it yet, but they have promised me they would, and that's to stagger the times that they start and end, and to where they can maybe have most of the time on the intermediate school, you have a lot of drop off, and that like what Louise said, that causes stacking there, and then so that you've got a lot of exit and a lot of entry, depending on which time of day. But if they were to do as we asked, and this will be based off, of course, traffic study, to try to stagger the start and let out times for the school, then I think that would help matters a lot. But as far as the current traffic that we've got, again, I think it'll be lighter in some areas and probably heavier in other areas, and that's just something we'll have to see what we can do to help make sure that we don't increase the amount of what I've considered the pinch point, and that's Concord Road and Kingston Pike. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Do we need a motion?
Let me, like Commissioner Green suggested, let me just try to summarize Louise's comments and Noah's, make sure I've got it other than the one area which I don't have. Because this does have to go to the board, mayor, and aldermen, so if you all are comfortable making a recommendation tonight, that probably would be good, because they still need to review it for 2 readings. The first change, let me just go back to the language that was proposed, and that's the change mixed-use town center to town center district. And so under the first section, replace the word downtown with town center, unique town center. Under the third bullet, provide for a built environment that prioritizes pedestrian activity but accommodates vehicular activity, or something, some kind of language like that. I'm not sure if I captured that exactly.
Okay, Mark, you might want to add pedestrian activity and walkability. I'm just trying to communicate that in a more general sense.
Walkability. Maybe say while also accommodating the vehicle or something like that.
Yeah.
Let me see. Also accommodating. Instead of having activity twice, maybe just accommodating vehicle or something. Alright, so provide for a built environment that prioritizes pedestrian activity and walkability while also accommodating the vehicle, or while also accommodating vehicular activity, I guess. Does that sound okay to everybody?
Yes.
Alright, under uses, down on the bullet number 4, just take out reference to mixed use and just call it town center district. And then under bullet 5, it's high density instead of higher. It's high density residential should only be permitted as part of a, and I'm not sure if we should say mixed use town center development plan. We may just want to say town center development plan, since that's the title of the district.
That's the question I was asking Louise about.
Yeah.
I think we probably ought to take out the word mixed use, because
Well,
the
my thought
town
was
center district language, it kind of has all the other components built into the rest of the language. So I would recommend taking out mixed use there, so that the whole, that it's all symmetrical. Now the next part I did not capture. I don't know what you said there. Something about Campbell Station, Concord Road, Brookline.
I wrote a town center development plan. I took out mixed use. A town center development plan, which includes high density residential, is intended to be located only in the area encompassed by South Campbell Station Road, Concord Road, and Kingston Pike.
Okay. I'll get that language from you just to make sure.
Okay.
Is everybody's okay with that language, I guess?
Yes.
Okay, the next next was just to strike the location section, and that's fine with me. I thought about doing that anyway. And I think the rest of the proposed language was acceptable. It's okay. That's all that I had. To make have anything else that I missed there?
That's all I had.
Okay. Yeah, with those changes, which are very doable, the staff would recommend approval of resolution PC-20-14, which recommends approval of now the amended ordinance 20-20.
I'm going to move for approval.
Second. Do we have a second?
Second. Ed?
Okay. All right. Chairman Holliday,
Aye.
Commissioner St. Clair,
Aye.
Mr. Green,
Aye.
Mr. Bellamy,
Aye.
Mayor Williams,
Mayor Williams, aye.
Vice Mayor Paulin,
Aye.
Commissioner Dick, Commissioner Russ,
Aye.
and Commissioner Myers.
Commissioner Myers, aye.
Okay, the motion passes 9-0 with the amendments noted.
Moving on to item number 9, discussion on amendment to the Farragut Municipal Code, Appendix A, zoning, Chapter 4, Section 29, grant opening special events permit to provide for different sign related provisions, Town of Farragut applicant.
Yeah, this item was discussed last month as a workshop item, and I still have it as a workshop item.